Hi all, I hope you are doing well and welcome to a Cine Circle webinar on film crowdfunding. It would be fantastic if first of all you could all just give me a quick thumbs up to let me know that you can hear me okay, that you can see me okay, and that everything is working and that there are no technical difficulties, and then we will get started on the webinar. Okay, fantastic. I can see that you guys can hear me and see me, which is good. Again, it would be great if you guys could give me just a quick thumbs up in the comments, just so that I know that everything is working okay. And then we will get started. Throughout the webinar, feel free to leave any questions, any comments you might have, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Great, Lisa, that you can see me. That's fantastic. Also, feel free to introduce yourselves in the comments, use it as a networking opportunity. Let us know who you are, whether you're a film director, a producer, whereabouts you live. I'm fairly sure we got registrations from all around the world. So, there's people from the US, from the UK, from Asia as well. So feel free to let us know where you are, what you do, and so on. And again, if you have any questions, I will answer them as soon as I can. So first of all, I want to start off with why I do these monthly webinars, teaching people how to crowdfund, because I see some questions. Whenever I talk to people about crowdfunding, they have the exact same concerns, the exact same questions. And I just want to know whether you guys see any of this that's familiar. Either you launched a campaign, but you only managed to raise 1 or 2K and you don't really know how to raise more. Perhaps you had an extremely professional team, an incredible crowdfunding page that you spend weeks designing, you launch and you raise literally £0. I hear that a lot as well, and there's some good reasons for that. Perhaps you've never crowdfunded and you don't know where backers actually come from. You can rely on family and friends for, a couple £100, maybe 1,000, 2,000, but what about the rest? Where does that actually come from? I also hear constantly, how do you get strangers to back your campaign? You've tried every single Twitter account, you've posted on Facebook groups, Reddit threads, and nothing seems to work. And then the final question that I always get is, I run Facebook ads and I get a great cost per click, but no one actually backs my campaign. So if any of those sound familiar, I'm hoping that today's webinar will help you a little bit. If you guys, again, have any other questions, any other concerns, anything else that that you were really wondering about crowdfunding, do feel free to comment it, and I'll try to get to those questions. So in today's webinar specifically, I'm going to start off with a brief introduction to crowdfunding. Just to, and this isn't, some history of crowdfunding or anything like that, but I just want to clear up a couple of misconceptions about crowdfunding that I feel like will be a good sort of first layer to, to put you on the right path. I then want to talk through, a little bit of statistics and strategy. And then we're going to get into the 3 main topics, which is the first one is, why do people back? And how to actually pitch your campaign. The next one is how to actually successfully market your campaign. How do you reach out to people? How do you let them know about your campaign in the most successful way? And then the final is, how do you actually scale your campaign to 10K plus? That's usually the boundary that people have a really big trouble getting past. How do you raise more than 10K? Because suddenly you can't possibly rely on just family and friends. You can't possibly, rely on just spamming Facebook groups. You need a proper strategy, and I'm going to talk you through some of the main ways of doing that. And I'll also have a bonus offer for all of you guys at the very end who stay until the end. So a little bit about me. So first of all, I actually work as a digital marketing consultant. I work at some startups doing growth marketing. I also, although I don't really consider myself a film producer anymore, I did also work as a film producer for a couple of years. I have not produced a film in about 3 years, which is why I don't necessarily call myself a film producer. But I started off actually as a film producer looking for funding for short films, and that's how I discovered crowdfunding. And as you know, as a film producer, I did a crowdfunding campaign. My first one, I raised 2K. My next one, I raised 10K when I had a little bit more of a proper strategy. And then another one, I raised £30,000. And after that campaign, I started doing crowdfunding coaching, where I was teaching other people through, master classes, through webinars, and through private coaching, exactly how to crowdfund, how to also, maintain integrity when crowdfunding and not give it that, black kind of name that it has so far, where people, leaves a lot of filmmakers embarrassed to crowdfund, which it shouldn't be. It's an absolutely amazing thing. And I think it's really fundamental for most filmmakers who are starting off, who don't have, the connections with investors and so on. So, how do you do that without feeling guilty for asking people for money? And then finally, for anyone who doesn't know me personally and hasn't been to any of our events, I'm also the founder of Cine Circle. We've been running it for the last couple of years, where we, run networking events, a series of festivals in London, film festivals, as well as different masterclasses. So let's get started. First of all, a brief introduction to crowdfunding. I think this is really important because I think people have sort of wrong perceptions about crowdfunding. So what is crowdfunding? Well, essentially, it's the practice of funding a project or venture by raising money from many different people who all normally contribute a relatively small amount, right? And why should you crowdfund? This is the main sort of thing that people don't really understand. Unless you've got a massive celebrity or a massive actor on board, most of the time you shouldn't necessarily crowdfund the project in order to make money from the crowdfunding campaign. So I tend to disagree about raising money for a crowdfunding campaign that you are the main project creator and actually paying yourself, especially if it's a big fee. Secondly, you should really crowdfund as opposed to making money to bring a project to life that you're passionate about, that you can't otherwise fund in any other means. Now, this can be, this could definitely be a teaser or a short film for a commercial feature film project. This could be, a passion, feature film, a passion short film, passion documentary that you're doing. But generally speaking, if you set out with the objective to make as much money as possible, you're going to go in with a wrong attitude, most likely a wrong tone and a wrong pitch, which will then make it a lot harder for you to actually find backers. So when you go out with the approach, okay, if I make some money out of it, great, but that's not my first target, you'll find that it's a lot easier to find backers. And I'll walk you through some of those steps in a little bit as well. But that tends to help people a lot. Because who are backers? And this is, again, where there is a big misconception, because I've heard people call, backers investors, and certain words like that. And really, backers are not investors. They're donors. They're people who are going to donate money to your campaign, most of the time not expecting a lot back. So when you think about someone putting £30 for your campaign and then getting a link to a film or a digital copy of the film, which most likely at some point in the future you're going to release online for free, for example, as is the case with most short film projects, they're not really getting much in return. A social media shout out as well is one of those perks where people don't tend to get that much in return. And that's why you're actually looking for people who want to support the project or the people behind the project itself, rather than people who are, expecting money back, or expecting something along those lines. So actually, on that note, when I said that there is some people who have, a really professional crew, a really professional team, and they're looking to create a very, very commercial, high-budget project, they tend to not find a lot of people who will simply donate, because those people say, you know what, I'm not going to pay £30 now for a link to the film. I'll wait until it's out in cinemas and then pay £7. So that's where a little bit of a disconnect comes in. So it's important to understand that backers are, most of the time, in 90% of the cases, donors rather than people who are really expecting something concrete back for giving you money for the film. And where do they come from? Well, that's going to be a little bit of the topic of today's webinar. But really, backers are people who you might know, who you will get to know during the marketing process, people who learn about your project and, and decide to support it, people who you might have on social media or people who you gather on social media. And really, anyone who ends up knowing about your project. And we're going to talk about the different ways of finding these backers. So, when talking about statistics and strategy, I am going to give you guys some of the main kind of a breakdown of really how backers work for film projects. And this is something that I would recommend not doing. And essentially, if you have a target of £10,000, it's just an easy amount to talk about. Your average backing for most crowdfunding campaigns will be £50. That's something to keep in mind, that really on average, people will give you £50 when they back the crowdfunding campaign. And this will possibly be some people who will give you £1,000, some people who will give you £5, but the average will normally be £50 for a film crowdfunding campaign. This means that if you're trying to raise 10K, you're gonna need 200 backers, right? And then the next step, and that's all correct, but then how you get to those 200 backers, that's usually where people go wrong. So another good statistic is that you will normally get about a 5% conversion rate on your actual crowdfunding page. That means 5% of the people who will come onto your Kickstarter page, who will come onto your Indiegogo page, will back the campaign, right? Which means if you need 200 backers, you need about 4,000 people who will come onto your campaign page. Out of those, 5% will back, which will be £200. Each one of those backs £50. You get to your 10K. Now, a very traditional marketing strategy would be to try and get a 1% click-through rate, which means, to try and run some advertising to a cold audience, run some Facebook ads, things like that. Try to reach 400,000 people, and then 1% click-through rate will go to your page, and then boom, you get funded. But that just simply does not work for film crowdfunding, because for film crowdfunding, you need to be a lot more personal than that. And how you reach out to people really does matter. So this is the main strategy that I always talk about. Whenever I do private coaching, whenever I do any courses or online courses, it always comes down to this one kind of formula, which is you want to reach out to a mass number of people who, one, know you, know about your project, and you want to reach out to them in a very personal way. And if you manage to get all three of those, most of the time, they will end up backing your campaign. But most people don't do that. They try to reach out to just complete strangers who know nothing about the campaign, who know nothing about you, and they reach out to them by spamming Facebook groups, and they do not hit any of these three. So it's important to reach out to a lot of people, but it's also important to reach out to them all in a personal way. And how do you do that? Well, I'm going to start off with the first most important thing, which is how to create the perfect pitch. And before I really get into the pitch, I want to talk to you guys about why people actually back campaigns. Because again, this is something that some people get confused about. So I want to ask you guys, and feel free to comment in the YouTube comments, who here has ever actually backed a campaign, a film crowdfunding campaign? Who from everyone over here has backed a crowdfunding campaign, and why? And I can, feel free to comment. I'm going to tell you guys, and by the way, there is a little bit of a lag between what I tell you guys and when you hear it, about 45 seconds. So you'll probably hear this 45 seconds later. But most likely, if you've ever backed a crowdfunding campaign, you most likely knew the person who was running the crowdfunding campaign. It was probably a friend, a colleague, someone you've worked with before. That tends to be the most common thing that happens. Or you felt like you connected with them. So I must say, most of the time, I only support crowdfunding campaigns if I know the people, if I've met them, for example, at some of my events. So when I go to my networking events, I talk to a lot of people. Haven't been to one in about a year, which kind of sucks. But I talk to a lot of people there. And if someone then, tells me about a campaign, I feel like I connected with them, even though I don't actually really know them. I wouldn't consider them a friend or a colleague. I might support their campaign. And that's where, if you feel like you connect with someone, or for example, you might have even seen a completely random campaign somewhere, but the video just connected with you so much. And most likely the person in the video is what you connected with. You connected with that person, you really understood, their message, what they were trying to achieve. And most likely that's why you would have backed the campaign from a complete stranger. And I see that you guys are commenting some things. So Martin, I have a few times to help friends, the most common. Emily, I've backed probably 10 to 15 film campaigns, all friends and colleagues. And Melanie, I have donated to some campaigns, small amounts, because I like the idea, wanted to see the film come to fruition. So yeah, so the other thing that is about getting money from complete strangers is that in most cases, unless there's some very, very specific ones, which we'll talk about later, people will back small amounts. They'll back £5, £10 if they really like the idea. But the main point over here is that actually most people do not support the film project itself. They actually support the people behind the project. And this is where you really need to change your pitch. And this is sort of the what I'm going to talk you guys through when it comes to pitching a film crowdfunding campaign. This can be used in your crowdfunding video, where most likely you might be talking to the camera, asking people to back the campaign. So that will be your pitch. You might also use it if you go to networking events and you just want to speak to people, tell them about your project. It might be if you're messaging people, emailing people, calling anyone to tell them. So literally at any point, after you've created this initial pitch, when you talk about your campaign, you will be using this sort of pitch structure to everyone, including possible crew members, possible team members who might be, up for coming on board your project. And Nisa, I recently came across one, but couldn't connect, didn't like what they were offering back. And yeah, that's fair enough as well. So I want you guys to just, keep this in your mind. People, including all of yourselves, and it's not any different for anyone than it is for you, is that you mainly support the people behind the project and not the film project itself. And people normally try to find this, this magic formula, which is, how do I get people to support my film project without knowing anything about me? And that's where I think you possibly could, but it would be extremely, extremely difficult. And actually, if you take this fact, which is that people support the people behind the projects, it becomes a lot easier to find backers as well. So let's talk a little bit about creating the perfect pitch. Now, there is two parts to every single crowdfunding pitch. There's the film story, and then there is the campaign story. And most people only ever use the film story. And I don't need to tell you about that. This is essentially your film pitch, right? So this is I'm going to make a film on this topic. It's going to be, starring this actor. It's going to be about this. It's going to have these themes. This is what festivals we want to send it to, etc., etc., etc. That's your film pitch. And this is important. You need to have this. But this is also what tends to bore people to death. That's the first issue with it. And second of all, it's what makes everything seem really, really salesy. Like you're trying to sell this film, and it's great when you're trying to actually sell to investors, but it doesn't work as well when you're trying to sell the film to people who are simply donating. And actually, what you need before you start talking about your film story and pitching the film itself is a campaign story. And the campaign story is essentially the story of why you want to make the film, why you're the one who's making this film, and sort of the story behind that. And if you start off with that story, first of all, it's a lot more natural. You'd actually probably start with the campaign story naturally when you were talking to, say, family or friends or close friends about this project. It makes it a lot more genuine. And second of all, people want to hear something real. And what I mean by that is, you might have seen, recently there is a lot of films that come out which are based on a true story and so on. And that's because suddenly when someone tells you that something is a true story, it becomes so much funnier or so much more dramatic or so much scarier or so much intense. Any emotion that you'd feel with a fictional story, when you know that it's real, it amplifies it by 10. And I'm going to show you some examples of some pitches and how you could use that. But really it makes you more genuine. It makes it less salesy. So let me give you guys two pitches that I had for my short film for which we raised the 30K. And this was a short film about mental health. And we started off with a sort of traditional pitch, which we were telling everyone. And that pitch, basically went like this, where we said, listen, we don't believe that there's enough films being made about mental health. We believe that, as filmmakers, we need to push that kind of agenda forward. Therefore, we wanted to create a film that's really going to promote people's well-being in our society and showing that small acts of kindness can have massive impacts on people's lives. And the film is going to follow 5 characters who yada, 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 and no one cares. You're telling the story about this film, and I see this all the time in my networking events where people tell me a pitch where they start telling me about the characters and the story, and very, very rarely do I care at that point. But if you start off with something that's actually real, something that's a real story, suddenly people are a lot more interested in you than you might think. Actually, they're more interested in you than in the film story itself. So now I'm going to tell you the genuine reason why I decided to make that film. And basically, someone who was really close to me a couple of years ago, before I even thought of the idea of the film, was suffering from depression and anxiety. And on a certain day where things were getting so overwhelming, she decided to commit suicide. And she knew that she was going to do it. She went into work knowing that it was going to be her last time to go into work. She sat down at her desk feeling completely alone, completely isolated. And one of her coworkers saw that she was struggling and made her a cup of tea. Made her a cup of tea and asked her, "How are you?" But not just "How are you?" but really asked her and expected an answer. And it was at that point that sort of her brain got flooded with all these emotions of, people will miss me if I'm gone. I matter to people's lives. People care about me. And these positive emotions were the reason that she didn't commit suicide that day. And honestly, it was that one tiny act of kindness, making her a cup of tea and asking how she was the reason why she's still alive today. And when she told me this story, I realized that, first of all, life can be extremely fragile, but kindness is powerful. And that's why I decided to make this film, to show that in our society, a small act of kindness can go a long way. It can literally save lives. Would you like to hear some more about the actual story? And then you could talk about the film. But I gave something real, a real story of why I'm making this film, and it was 100% true. And every single time we started off with this pitch, people wanted to listen more. Whereas if I just started off with a generic pitch about mental health, people zone out. So you want to start off with something real, something perhaps slightly emotional, and a reason, a true reason for why you want to make this film, and your why needs to be extremely strong here. Now, I want to give you guys a completely different pitch. okay, which is these two actors came to me one time and they said they wanted to do a comedy web series about tour guides in London, which is, you know, completely different to any other thing that I've ever done. So, you know, and they told me all these, you know, kind of interesting characters that they could put in, and nothing was really gripping me. So I said, can you guys, you know, I was hearing these stories, which I guess could be funny, but it was just, you know, there was nothing there that was really, you know, substantial. And I said, guys, just give me a real story from when you were tour guides. And because I kept on asking them, you know, why do you guys want to do this film? And they said, well, because we were tour guides, you know, and we feel like we really know that space and so on. And I kept on asking them, can you just give me one funny story, like one hilarious story that actually happened from when you were tour guides? And so the actress, because it was an actor and an actress, the actress said, okay, you know what? I'm going to tell you one story, which is actually from my first day as a tour guide. She went through all this training and so on, but she said, this was my first day that I was actually alone on the bus. I was the main tour guide. I came on the bus and, you know, we had a packed bus. You know, this is way pre-COVID where we were allowed to all get on buses together. And, you know, we started driving around London. I started telling everyone, you know, about all the different, you know, monuments. People were really engaging with me. They were asking me lots of questions and, you know, it was great. Everything was going fantastic. You know, I knew all the answers. I knew all of my things. People were laughing. People were entertained. It was fantastic until this kid at the front of the bus started to piss out the window. What do you do in a moment like that when you're at this front of the bus, a kid is pissing out the window, the mom sees that the kid is pissing out the window, she doesn't do anything about it? What on earth do you do in that situation? That was the moment when I decided that we need to make a web series about this. And then you can keep talking about the actual pitch for the film. So this is another example of, you know, essentially telling your campaign story is telling your why. Why do you want to make this film? And it needs to be a story. It can't just be, I want to make this film for, you know, this reason. It really needs to be a story of why you're making this, you know, why you're doing this campaign. And if your why is strong enough, that why is what connects you. It connects your backers with you. That's what will get people who don't know you at all, who will connect with your why, and through your why think, I want to support this person because he's got a really strong reason to make this film. So that's the first thing. Stop pitching the film, start pitching the why you are making this film. And, you know, I can see you guys saying, you know, very nice story, so funny. The reason why that was funny is because it was real. If I just told you this as a joke, you probably would not laugh at all. But because you think it's real, because you know it's real, it suddenly becomes a lot funnier. My other, you know, sort of story of why I made it, the other film, again, it's so emotional because it's real. It's not anything that people necessarily haven't heard before, but because it's real, it makes it more emotional. So start thinking about your why, your true story. Next, when you've got your pitch, next is how do you actually reach out to people? And, you know, I want to ask you guys, first of all, you know, have you ever responded to spam? I mean, you know, have you ever responded to a filmmaker who just posts a link in a filmmaker Facebook group and says, please back or please support? I don't think anyone has ever done that before, where they actually backed that link, that campaign just because someone spammed a link somewhere, or, you know, just spammed you a DM somewhere on Twitter, or, you know, posted it in some group. If you've never supported a campaign like that, why would anyone else? I can tell you, I've tried it thousands of times. Not once do you get a backer out of that. So that's the first thing. You do not want to communicate in such a non-personal way. And actually, this idea of personal outreach is exactly what, you know, what will make you be able to find backers. You know, for example, if you've got a Facebook ad, it is the absolute least personal way you can reach out to someone. Because through a Facebook ad, you can't reach out to people specifically. You have to reach out to them based on demographics, based on where they live, based on their age, based on their interest. They know that the ad wasn't intended for them specifically. It was just intended to hundreds of thousands of people, and they happened to be one of them. That's why Facebook ads are so ineffective when it comes to film campaigns. Next, you've got a social media post. Again, it was meant for thousands of your followers, possibly, not for someone specifically. So why would someone specifically really reach out, support your campaign just based on that social media post? But then if you have a personalized email that was actually, not a newsletter, but an email that you specifically sent to someone, or a personal private message, and truly a message such as, hey, we met last year at this networking event. I heard, that you're making another film. It sounds amazing. Let me know when it comes out. And by the way, I'm creating a campaign. Here's some more information. That's what I mean by a personal message, or a phone call, or perhaps meeting someone in person. These personal ways of meeting up someone, they tend to just simply convert much better. So again, if you do a social media post, maybe if 100,000 people will see it, maybe one person will back it. But a personalized email, maybe 1 in 5 people will back it. A phone call, I can pretty much guarantee you guys that if you call someone and tell them about the campaign, they're most likely going to back it. If you meet someone in person, again, they're so likely to back it. So it's just the more personal you get, the better your conversion becomes. The more people say yes. But then there is the obstacle of how do you personally reach out to a mass number of people? And that's what we talked about before, because you have to still reach out to a really, really large number of people. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of quick hacks over here. The first thing, on your launch day, on the first day that you actually launch your campaign, you want to reach out really, really personally to hundreds of people, if not thousands of people. So one thing, and you want to do it in a really personal way. So one way to do that, you can actually draft really, really personal emails to all of your contacts. Say you've got 1,000 people, you can draft really personal emails to all of them weeks, even months ahead of time, right? And say again, hey, it's been so long that I've seen you. How are you doing? How is your family doing? I've heard that that you've just released a film. That's fantastic. I'd love to see it. I really love the trailer. By the way, I'd love to meet up with you again. And also, I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign. I'd love it if you could take a look. I thought you'd really like perk number 6. Something along those lines, where also you're giving them a little bit of something to think about. Oh, what is perk 6? Let me go click on it and check. That's a really personal email, and it might take you a couple of minutes per every single contact. You won't have that time on your launch day, but you can draft all those emails and then just save them in your drafts folder. For example, if you're using Gmail, you can just close the email and it will save in your drafts folder. And on the launch day, you can just click send, 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 and send hundreds of highly, highly personalized emails within the first day. And everyone will think, wow, this person bothered to email me personally on that first day. I'll definitely at least check out the campaign. Another thing that you could use, instead of using something like MailChimp, and if any of you guys are not familiar with these names, such as MailMerge and MailChimp, MailChimp is a software to send out newsletters. And it's very, very specific. And if you've ever received a newsletter from MailChimp, you know it's from MailChimp. Most of the time, they have their logos there, and they look very specific. And 100% you know that it's a newsletter, and it was sent out to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And you know that it's not personal. Whereas you can use something like MailMerge, and I'm not going to go into exactly how it works, but essentially it actually sends out an email from your Gmail that looks exactly like a Gmail that you would write. But you can personalize it. So instead of writing an email out to everyone, you can say hi, first name, and it will put that person's first name in. You can put other things like, it's been this many years since I've seen you, and you can put in that number into a spreadsheet. And it will fill in all those emails for you, and it will send those really personalized email to people that will actually look personalized. So that's another little hack. There's other things like, there's all these softwares for sending out bulk DMs. These are, sort of on Twitter. And Twitter is an interesting thing. It either never properly works when you reach out to your followers on Twitter, or that's really the only place where I've gotten strangers to back over £1,000 per person in my campaigns. So you don't get much until you suddenly get £1,000 backer from Twitter. That's been my experience on Twitter. You can also tag people in individual posts that you think really, really relate to them. And finally, well, if you're in the UK, you might be able to do this, at some point next year, which would be great, to actually create an event and invite people, that or that are interested in the project, invite them to a networking event. And that way you can speak to possibly 100 people all within a couple hours and tell them all individually about your campaign. And that way, again, you're reaching out to a mass number of people, but in a really, really personal way. And then the next day, once you've spoken to them face to face, you can then just text them the link or email them the link or message them the link. These are just some of the many strategies that you can have on how to reach out to a lot of people in a personal way. But I'm hoping that this is giving you guys an idea of the kind of ways that you should be reaching out to people. So, you know what your pitch is. You know how to reach out to people. So the next step is finding your actual audience, finding your backers. Who are you really reaching out to, right? So you want to focus on the right kind of audience. And, this is kind of to show you this, to get to your 200 backers, to get to your 10K, you can possibly have a really hot audience. And that a hot audience an example of that would be one of your family members, or someone that you know really well, right? Or one of your friends or colleagues. You can reach out to those people, and probably 1 in 5 of them will back the campaign, right? But the problem is you reach out of that audience very, very fast. Some people, 10, 20, 30 people that they might be reach out to, and then they finish, right? And the problem with that is you need about 1,000 of those people to actually to get to your 200 backers. And most people, maybe have 50 max, family, friends that, that they can really reach out to. And then what happens is they go from the hot audience to the very, very cold audience at the bottom, where they start spamming, they go into panic mode and they start spamming Facebook groups, they start spamming Twitter accounts, and they just start posting their link wherever they can. And there's actually a lot of bits in the middle where you can still gather a lot of backers in a lot of easier way than just by spamming a cold audience. So let's talk a little bit about who is your audience. Is it people who would want to watch your film, or people fans of your film genre, rich people, people who backed campaigns in the past? And these are, or strangers. These are all the different categories that I hear all the time. And again, I want to kind of rule out a couple of misconceptions here. People who would want to watch your film, those people will get to watch your film anyways. Whether they back the campaign or not, most likely it's going to be available somewhere, and they'll be able to watch it for a lot less than you want them to back. Also, say you're making a horror film, right? And you're thinking, okay, horror fans will be really interested in this. Horror fans kind of want to watch the horror film, tonight, and not in 6 to 12 months time, or even 3 years time, which is how long it takes to make some of these films, and pay 10 times the amount for it now. So these are general kind of misconceptions. It's not that you should completely rule out these people when you're marketing, but these aren't going to be your primary backers. And then rich people. I hear this all the time. I run this crowdfunding networking event where people just go around and they ask, a couple of crowdfunding experts questions. And every single person, says, we always ask them, have you ever backed a campaign? And they say, well, no, because I'm not rich. And you'll actually find that the most surprising people will back your campaign. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that it's actually a lot harder to get money from rich people than it is from non-rich people. Because most people are rich because they know how to hold on to their money, is the one thing that I've realized about, about that kind of topic. And really, there is some rich people who will back your campaign. They're called super backers. Can talk about those a little bit in a second. But most of the time, actually, it will be regular people who will be supporting you, people just like you, as opposed to trying to look for, millionaires. And then on the topic of strangers, there is plenty of ways to get strangers to back your campaign. And I go through a lot of this in a lot of my courses. The main one is actually making strangers feel like they know you. So you can do this by, making a really, really personal video telling your why and putting it on your crowdfunding page, posting a lot of, team photos, videos on your social media, and really creating a story that people will follow on your social media where they will get to know, sort of get to feel like they know you. So if you think about Instagram influencers, for example, the reason why they're so effective at selling products is because it's as if they have a million friends. They have a million people who follow them around the world, and and what they're doing on a daily basis and everything. You pretty much feel like you know the influencers that you are actually following. And then suddenly when they, recommend a product, it's a friend recommending a product, not a brand, and you trust them. And this is the exact same thing that you want to do here. You want to make strangers feel like they know you. You can also find people who are passionate about the topic of your film. So when we were making a film about mental health, we were finding a lot of people who were really passionate about, promoting mental health, promoting well-being in our society. And then we've got super backers. I haven't had a campaign once where I haven't had a super backer back over £1,000 for any of my campaigns. Every single time it's happened. And the reason for that is, again, there's very specific strategies for reaching out to these people, to reaching out to super backers. But the main one is, again, your why that needs to be solid. You need to have, some very specific things on your campaign page that, basically make super backers interested and make them feel this is a real campaign with people who are really passionate about it. But essentially, you should not start with strangers. You should actually start with people that you know, right? And as I said, when you're doing a 10, 20K crowdfunding campaign, you can't possibly rely on, on your just your family and friends. I mean, unless you are super rich. But the first thing is, if your family and friends can't support your project, how can you expect strangers to? If your best friend, if your, parents, if your housemates, if your, partner doesn't want to support your project, why in the world would complete strangers? So for my 30K crowdfunding campaign, my family and friends donated about 2 to 3K. It was around like 2.5K, something like that. The rest came from people that I did not know before I started. But it didn't come from strangers. And again, there are many, many strategies for how to get these people to back your campaign. But really, the main one that I want to talk to you about, the main kind of strategy, is team building. That's really the strategy to scaling above 10K. And the theory behind this is actually really simple, which is, you gather 10 filmmakers. Each filmmaker finds 20 backers, average backing of £50, you raise 10K. Voila. But why is this so hard? And why is it that there are so many crowdfunding campaigns where there are 10 filmmakers involved and you can't actually, you still can't raise over 1K because no one's really doing the other things. No one's reaching out to people personally. No one's, reaching out to a lot of their contacts and so on. And again, team building isn't the only way that you can do this, but it is the simplest way. It is the way that I teach. And, the way that, I did this, for example, for my 30K campaign is I had 2 other campaign managers. I brought two executive producers on board who were essentially there. They were co-producing the project with me. They felt like they were just as involved in the project as me. And that's the main thing. You want to make every single person who's on board your team, who's helping you raise money feel like it's their project just as much as yours, even if they don't have the rights to it, even if they don't have any creative control. You want them to really feel like it's their project. And again, I go through a lot of different strategies on how to do this, but that's the basic strategy. And what I had was these 2 additional campaign managers. I had 12 associate producers on that project, and I had 5 cast and crew members who helped me promote the campaign. That means everyone only had to raise $1.5K each. And suddenly it became a lot more attainable, considering that about probably over 5K from that also came from super backers, came from complete strangers. It was actually more like 1K each that people had to raise for a 30K crowdfunding campaign. And again, there was a couple of people at the top, me and the 2 other campaign managers, who raised a lot more than that. So suddenly all these associate producers only needed to raise a couple hundred, really. And that's how it sort of became very, very attainable to actually do that without spending money on ads, without spamming people, and in really personal ways. So, there is a lot of benefits to growing a team. First of all, it multiplies the amount of personal contacts who will back the campaign, because suddenly you don't have your 10 best friends, you have your 10 best friends and the 10 best friends of everyone else on the team, So if you grow a really, really supportive team, it will honestly help you so much. Second of all, it expands your social media reach for free. I want you guys to try something. I mean, go onto your Facebook page and do a post, just do a post and do nothing and see how much reach you get. You'll probably get about 20 or 30 people who will see that post. Now do the same thing and suddenly have 10 people who all comment on the post, all share the post, and all like the post, and maybe even tag a person. Suddenly you go from a reach of 20 to a reach of 1,000 or 2,000. And that's how you expand your social media reach, and you suddenly raise so much more awareness about your campaign. You also have more varying skill set on the team. So perhaps you might have someone who can do graphic design. Perhaps you will have a video editor who will help you do the campaign video for free, and so on. And also you might have more resources for rewards and perks. So the great thing about our campaign, and actually another campaign that I worked on a campaign recently, I coached on a campaign where their target was 10K. They actually ended up raising 16.5K on Indiegogo. And it was nearly all strangers, actually, that campaign, because they did so well with picking their rewards. And they had rewards that people really wanted to buy. So for example, they knew a person who had an Airbnb, somewhere in North England. And they said, you know what, I'll give up the Airbnb for a night, put it up as a perk. There are some people who put up singing lessons, who put up French lessons, and all these other different rewards, very, very specific rewards that people might want. For my short film, we raised the 30K, we had a reward where essentially for £100, you get to shadow the DOP for 1 day on set. You got an assistant cameraman credit, and you got that experience and that credit. And so many people that we never knew suddenly started backing the campaign because they really wanted that reward. But that wouldn't have worked unless we did the work first with our own personal contacts, because no one will get that reward if you have £0 funded. They will only get that if suddenly they see, oh, they're raising 30K and they already have 20. Great, I'll get that reward because this is going to be an amazing film. You need to do the legwork first, and then suddenly all these strangers will start coming in. The other thing, it's great for boosting team morale and campaign credibility, which is something how you get super backers who are more interested in your project. So these super backers are essentially people who back thousands of different crowdfunding campaigns, not just film campaigns, but they literally live on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And if they like your project, they'll back it £1,000. This really happens, but it seems to happen a lot more if you have a large team. So that said, I just want you guys to really follow this strategy, because people don't back films, they back the project creators. So, pitch your personal story instead of your film story. That's step one. Contact people that know you or know about your project. then contact those leads in an actually really personal way rather than spamming them, and then grow a core team to multiply the reach. I mean, that is really the basic strategy. And I'm hoping that, this is starting to make sense to all of you guys and that you can follow this strategy. And the next step, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about an online course called the Advanced Film Crowdfunding Formula. And I want to give you guys a couple more tips in a lot of these different areas over here, which I cover in the course, if anyone is interested in that. So the first thing that I go through is in this online course, and again, you guys will get a special discount for this if you'd like, is statistics and strategy. So there's things such as the fact that you should always launch your film crowdfunding campaign on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. That's, for example, a key statistic, because if you launch your campaign on a Sunday, you're most likely going to fail just because of the day where you launched your campaign. So there's things like that and theories behind those strategies of why you need to launch on a Tuesday at 11 a.m., for example. I go through a lot more different examples of how to pitch, and a couple of these 4 essential steps for every single crowdfunding campaign, which honestly, if you get those 4 steps right, I've never seen a film crowdfunding campaign fail once they actually got those 4 steps. And you can do those 4 steps by yourself at home right now, which is great. I also go through a ton of different strategies on how to build a team, how to, find team members that you don't know, get them really engaged in your project, get them to help you actually raise the funds. That's a lot of what I base this course on as well. The next thing is your audience. I go into a lot of detail about, how do you organize your audience? How do you build an audience so that you actually have thousands of people that know you, that you could reach out to, and and exactly how that works and how they can actually turn into backers. Then I go through relatively advanced social media strategies, including your exact social media calendar plan. So there's different steps to your social media plan when you're doing before your campaign, during your campaign, and so on, which is also really, really crucial. Building an email list. I also go through how to reach out to press media and influencers. So for the Power of One Coin, we got a couple of YouTubers on board, and how exactly, you do about that, how to reach out to them. And this also includes, this course will include a lot of template emails that you can use, a lot of documents with all the different strategies. The other things that are on there are more related to the actual campaign itself. So how to build an incredible campaign page that converts, a lot better than other people, because the better your campaign is converting, the less people you need to actually contact. Preparing for launch, and really I go through how do you guarantee yourself that you will raise 30% of your goal in the first couple of days. That's really the key metric, is you want to get to 30% funded within the first 2 days. And if you manage to do that, you, statistically speaking, have a 90% chance of success. So how do you guarantee yourself that money? Finally, I go through, what you actually do during the campaign, because the main thing during the campaign is to build up urgency. You have a lot of urgency in the start, which is why a lot of people back in the first 3 days, which is the new thrill of an exciting campaign. And a lot of people will tend to back your campaign in the very, very last 4 days, which is why you tend to have a lot of people in the last days, because that's the last couple of days that they can back your campaign. But there's this whole period in the middle where most campaigns don't have any urgency. Why should anyone back today and not tomorrow? So I walk through a lot of the different steps on exactly how to create that urgency. If you guys have any questions about this, by the way, do let me know. And finally, there is also a bonus, which is how to sell your film online, which will actually mainly focus on Amazon Prime and how to sell a film on Amazon Prime. It's sort of a 2-hour interview with an expert who will talk you through all the steps for that. So I'm going to give you guys actually a 75% discount for all of this. If anyone is interested, I will post a link in a moment. And the final thing about this course is also, I don't want to give this to anyone who's not going to be using this information, who doesn't find it useful. So you also have a complete money-back guarantee if you don't feel like you can raise 10K after seeing everything in this course, you can simply ask for a refund and get the money back. So that said, I'm going to post a link here in the in the comments if anyone would like to get this course, and you do get it right away. That said, if you guys have any questions from this webinar, any questions about the course, or anything else, feel free to just post it here in the comments, and I'll get to those questions right away. Now, like I said, there is a little bit of a delay between what you guys hear over here and what I say. So I'm just going to wait just a little bit to see if there are any more questions. But except for that, I want to thank you guys all for listening, and I hope that you found this really helpful. So this is actually a course which is it's all actually it's not a course that I do live. This is actually an online course which is around 6 hours worth of video tutorials, kind of broken up into sort of 20-30 minute segments on each one of the topics. So it's about 6 hours of videos that you get access to right away. So what you'll get access to is these videos. You'll also get access to all the documents, template emails, and other relevant information for it. And finally, you'll also have my email address where you'll be able to, send me any questions that you've got, any other concerns, and I'll be able to kind of answer any questions that you might have about any of the modules as well. So you'll always be able to reach out to me while you're doing this. But again, this isn't actually a online, so this isn't actually a course with me teaching it live. It's an online course that you can simply access all of the videos right away. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions, do let me know. And I am also going to email all of you guys in a little bit with just all the sort of the replay to this link, to this video, and also the link again to the course if anyone is interested. So yeah, that said, I hope that you guys all found this useful. Again, I hope that you guys stick to this strategy. I have seen some people who take my course and then they go back to trying to spam a Facebook group. So please don't. And yeah, I hope that you guys all get funded. And last thing that I want to say actually about COVID-19 and crowdfunding, I have not seen a huge drop in crowdfunding now. There was one in between March and June, but actually now crowdfunding seems to be back, and people are backing campaigns even more than ever. And you get a lot of people who are now trying to support creatives during this time as much as they can. So you actually tend to get more super backers now than you did even before. Do you break down your budget for the crowdfunding? So could you just let me know what do you mean by the budget? So I break down. You mean the budget for your film, or because I actually don't use everything that I teach. I don't ask you to spend any money on your crowdfunding campaign. So there is no budget that you need for ads, for things like that. It's all actually it's all essentially something that you could do for free. So there is no budget per se for the crowdfunding course. How long do we have access for the course videos? So you have access for them forever. You can also download them if you want, but you will have access to the videos and to the course forever. And Lisa, as to the budget for the film, so I actually don't break down budgets for the film itself. So the course really covers crowdfunding and financing the film, but it doesn't cover the film production itself, for people to know how you spend the money you raise. All right, so I do add sort of budgets normally to a crowdfunding page. Not a detailed budget, but I do really recommend adding a budget to your crowdfunding page to show people roughly what you're spending the money on. So, we need to spend this much on locations, this much for actors, and so on. And that helps to add your campaign a lot more credibility and just makes it a lot more transparent, which makes it a lot more trustworthy, and that helps people back your campaign. Alex, please could you send the replay to the link for today's webinar? Unfortunately, it was quite late in joining. Yes, so I will email everyone with a replay link, which will be available for the next 24 hours. So you'll be able to, to watch it over the next day or so when you get a chance. Great. Okay, well, fantastic. And yeah, that said, if you guys are based in London, hopefully next year we'll be doing some more actual face-to-face events. So perhaps I'll get to meet some of you. If not, we do tend to do quite a lot of webinars, at least once or twice a month. So I'll hopefully see you in some of those as well. Okay. So thank you so much, guys, for watching and staying until the end. Really hope that this was useful and you guys got, some useful information out of it. And yeah, hopefully you guys will all get funded. And yeah, feel free to send me a link at info@cinecircle.co.uk to your crowdfunding campaign if you guys ever do go live. Yeah, I'd love to check it out. Okay, great. So thank you very much. Hope you guys have a nice evening, or if you're in the US, maybe even a nice start to the day. And yeah, good luck on the rest of your campaigns. All right, take care.